In ancient Greece, where marble gods watched from the mountains and poets sang of glory, there stood a city that worshipped only one thing: strength. Sparta was not built for beauty or art, but for war. Every stone of its streets, every law, every heartbeat of its people pulsed to one command: make them unbreakable. Here a child's cry was not a sign of life, it was a test. From the moment a Spartan boy took his first breath, elders gathered to judge him. Was he strong enough to survive? Did his limbs promise power, his gaze promise courage? If not, the verdict was swift and cold. The weak must die so the strong may rise. Mothers learned to silence their tears. Fathers turned away. The city demanded perfection, and perfection came at a terrible price. But this was no cruelty, the Spartans said. It was necessity. For in their world, only the fit could protect the homeland, and only the ruthless could rule it. Over centuries, Sparta became a living experiment, a society that sought to breed not men, but warriors. And what began as a quest for survival soon became an obsession: to forge the perfect soldier, even if it meant breaking what made them human. Before the name Spartan became a symbol of endurance, it was a warning. To be born within those walls was to be claimed by the state before the family. Sparta belonged not to its people but to its purpose, and its purpose was war. The city had no towering temples, no grand markets, no poets wandering its streets. What it had were laws. Laws carved not in marble, but in flesh. The architect of this world was Lycurgus, the legendary lawgiver. Some said he was chosen by the gods. Others whispered he was merely a man possessed by a vision so absolute it could not coexist with mercy. His code, known as the Retra, reshaped every corner of Spartan life. It dictated how one should eat, speak, fight, and even breed. Lycurgus decreed that no man should belong to himself. A Spartan is the property of Sparta, the elders proclaimed, and his blood is its weapon. To preserve that weapon, every weakness had to be purged. Newborns were inspected by the council of elders, who decided whether a child was worthy of life. If found wanting, too small, too frail, or simply imperfect, the infant was taken to the foot of Mount Taygetus, left among the rocks to die. It was called the apothetei, the place of rejection. To the Spartans, this was not cruelty. It was cleansing. Those who survived were not spared from the test. They were merely admitted into it. At the age of 7, boys were seized from their mothers and sent to the agōgē, the state's brutal training system. There, pain was a teacher, hunger was a companion, and fear was a tool. They learned to steal, fight, endure. Their bodies became instruments of violence, their minds tools of obedience. But the law of strength did not apply to men alone. Spartan women were forged by the same philosophy. While Athenian women were confined to shadows, Spartan girls trained in running, wrestling, and spear throwing. They were told their duty was sacred, to bear strong sons for Sparta. With strong women, like Lycurgus had said, come stronger men. In their world, even motherhood was a battlefield. Marriage was not about love, it was an act of breeding. The state intervened in unions, pairing men and women for the sake of physical excellence. If a husband was too old to produce strong heirs, he could be ordered to share his wife with a younger, fitter warrior. The goal was not passion but perfection. A child was not a gift. It was an investment in Sparta's future. The result was a society that walked a razor's edge between greatness and monstrosity. The Spartans built a world where weakness was sin, and survival itself was the only virtue. They believed they had found the formula for immortality, a city that would never fall because its sons would never break. But as the centuries would show, even a people made of iron could not escape the cracks in their own creation. The transformation of a Spartan boy into a soldier was not a choice. It was destiny. From the moment he entered the agōgē, his life ceased to be his own. The city became his mother, the army his father, and pain his constant companion. The agōgē was more than a school. It was a forge, and every child who entered it was raw metal waiting to be shaped into a blade. At 7 years old, boys were divided into herds called Eli, led by an older youth known as the Erin. They slept on reeds plucked from the riverbanks, ate what little the state gave them, and stole the rest, not because theft was forbidden, but because getting caught was. It was a lesson that would serve them on the battlefield. Cunning was as vital as courage. They were taught silence, restraint, and discipline. To speak too much was weakness. To show pain was shame. Their tutors struck them for hesitation, starved them to harden their resolve, and praised them for endurance. The older boys, themselves products of the same cruelty, served as both mentors and tormentors. The agōgē did not teach love or friendship. It taught loyalty to the unit, to the state, and to the gods of war. Each year brought a new trial. At 12, their cloaks were taken away, leaving them to sleep naked through the bitter Spartan winters. At 16, they were sent into the wild with nothing but a knife, forced to survive for days without aid. Those who returned were not boys anymore. They were hunters and sometimes killers. There are whispers that during these trials, the most promising youths were ordered to stalk and kill helots, the enslaved peasants of Sparta, as a rite of blood. Whether truth or legend, it revealed the heart of Spartan education. To live was to conquer fear, and to kill it within oneself. The culmination of their training came at 20. The surviving few were granted the Crimson Cloak and the right to join the Syssitia, the brotherhood of warriors who ate, fought, and died together. Only then were they considered full citizens, Spartiates, guardians of the state, and symbols of its unyielding ideal. Every scar on their bodies was proof of their worth. Every wound was a medal. They were the embodiment of a nation's dream. Men who could march barefoot across stone, fight without food, and die without fear. To them, the battlefield was not a place of death, but of belonging. In this relentless system, the Spartans achieved what no other city had: a brotherhood of warriors so disciplined, so united, that even kings feared to command them. Yet the perfection they sought came with a cost, one that would soon reach even those untouched by the sword. While Spartan men were molded in the fires of battle, the women of Sparta were tempered in the quiet forge of discipline. They were not warriors by profession, but by necessity. Their strength was the hidden pillar of the state, for without strong mothers, there could be no strong sons. Unlike the women of Athens, who were confined behind veils and walls, Spartan women moved freely under the open sky. They trained in running, wrestling, and javelin throwing, their bodies honed as carefully as the soldiers they would one day bear. Their training was not vanity but duty. Lycurgus himself had decreed it. Let them be strong, that they may give birth to strength. From childhood, girls learn to command their voices, to look men in the eye, and to never cower. They sang songs of courage and death, hymns that praised not beauty, but valor. When Spartan mothers gathered, it was not to gossip, but to speak of sons and victories. To be a woman in Sparta was to carry both womb and weapon. Marriage was not the gentle union of love. It was a state-controlled ritual of eugenics. The elders decided who should wed whom, pairing the physically strong to preserve the city's perfect breed. Young brides were often stolen in mock raids by their future husbands, a symbolic echo of conquest. And if a husband grew too old or too weak, the state could command him to share his wife with a stronger man. There was no shame in it, only duty to Sparta. The child was not the father's property. It belonged to the city. These women gave birth alone, without midwives, as proof of endurance. Weak infants were denied milk, for pity had no place in their creed. Their lullabies were not of peace, but of preparation. You were born for this. You were born to fight. When their sons marched to war, Spartan mothers gave them the same farewell for centuries. Return with your shield, or on it. It was not cruelty, but faith. Faith that a glorious death was better than a coward's life. Women bore that faith as a sacred fire. They were not merely spectators to the brutality of their society. They were its guardians. And in a world ruled by men, they were the ones who kept the laws of strength alive. Foreigners found them terrifying. Athenian visitors wrote with awe and disgust, describing Spartan women as bold, loud, and unwomanly. But the Spartans took pride in their difference. They believed their women were the finest in Greece, not for their looks, but for their will. These were the women of iron, mothers of warriors, keepers of Sparta's ruthless dream. Yet behind their fierce pride, some must have wondered what kind of world their sons were dying to preserve. For every generation born in Sparta's image came at the cost of tenderness, freedom, and choice. The city they sustained was becoming less a home and more a machine. Even the act of birth was a ritual of selection. Midwives trained in the city's doctrine examined newborns immediately. Those who appeared weak, small, or deformed were carried away to Mount Taygetus, to the pit known as the apōthete. There, beneath the cold mountain air, the cries of the rejected faded quickly into silence. The city called it mercy, for Sparta could not afford to feed the weak. Among the survivors, life was a test of endurance. The boys would enter the agōgē at 7, while girls would be prepared to replace their mothers. Every failure was met with punishment, every triumph with another trial. The ideal citizen was not born. He was manufactured, shaped by fire and loss. The state's control extended even to emotion. The Spartans believed that attachment softened the spirit. Husbands and wives lived apart, meeting only under the cover of night. Fathers rarely saw their children. Sons belonged to the barracks, not the home. This deliberate distance ensured loyalty to the city above all else. To feel too deeply was to risk rebellion. And yet, despite its cruelty, the system worked, at least for a time. The Spartan army became the most disciplined force the world had ever seen. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans held back an empire. Their courage became legend, their deaths eternal. The world saw their glory, but not their ghosts. The thousands of lives sacrificed to breed men who could die without fear. In their pursuit of perfection, Sparta became both immortal and hollow. The same laws that built their strength also sealed their fate. For a people who denied weakness, there could be no renewal, no compassion, no future beyond war. They had crafted the perfect warrior, but forgotten how to be human. Every nation shapes its children with stories. Sparta shaped them with scars. From the moment a Spartan child could walk, he was taught that his life belonged not to himself, but to the city. The songs sung in their training halls were not lullabies. They were hymns to death, victory, and endurance. He who fears nothing, the elders said, belongs to everything. The agōgē, that merciless school of survival, was not only a training ground for soldiers. It was the machinery of national identity. Boys were stripped of softness, not just of the body, but of the heart. They were forbidden to cry, forbidden to question, forbidden to remember a world beyond discipline. If they spoke of hunger, they were beaten. If they shivered in winter, they were mocked. The weak were not pitied. They were reminders of what could never be tolerated. At 12, they were given a single garment to wear through all seasons. They learned to steal food from the kitchens, to fight in the dark, to speak in riddles. Their mentors told them, "Pain is the forge of greatness." By 15, they had learned that empathy was a liability. The ideal Spartan boy would watch his brother bleed and see in it a lesson, not a tragedy. For centuries, Sparta stood untouchable, a living monument to discipline and control. Foreigners whispered its name with awe and fear, imagining a city of gods rather than men. Yet even gods grow weary of perfection, and for Sparta, the price of being flawless was decay. The cracks began quietly, not on the battlefield but in the bloodline. The very laws that sought to purify Sparta had condemned it to extinction. By breeding only the strongest, the Spartans had made their people few. Each generation became smaller than the last, their citizens rarer than the soldiers they trained. Those who survived the agōgē were often killed in endless wars. The perfect race was dying, not from defeat, but from success. As the centuries passed, the once mighty city began to hollow out. Its grand armies shrank to legions of ghosts, and its rigid code became a cage. The Helots, long oppressed and enslaved, grew restless beneath the iron rule. They were the invisible hands that tilled the fields, cooked the meals, and built the homes, the silent majority upon whose backs the Spartan dream had been built. But dreams cannot live forever when built on chains. Long after Sparta's armies vanished, its echo lingered. The city of warriors became a memory carved in the bones of history. a legend retold by poets, scholars, and soldiers who dreamed of its iron discipline, but forgot its human cost. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, yet the name Sparta endured, whispered on the lips of generals, carved into the walls of academies, invoked by those who sought strength without weakness. To some it was a symbol of courage and unity. To others, it was a warning of what happens when a society forgets the value of mercy. The ruins of the ancient city still stand today, silent under the Greek sun. Wildflowers grow where warriors once trained. The stones that heard the cries of newborns now listen only to the wind. There is peace at last in a place that once worshipped war. But if you walk those empty roads at dusk, it is said you can still feel something in the air. Not sorrow, not rage, but pride. A pride that refuses to die, even when its people are gone. Modern nations have studied Sparta's ways, its discipline, its courage, its order, trying to capture the secret of its strength. But few remember that what made Sparta powerful also made it fragile. By demanding perfection, it destroyed the very diversity that sustains life. By turning children into soldiers, it forgot the art of living. And yet the echo remains, not in swords or shields, but in the hearts of those who still believe that struggle can forge greatness. The Spartan creed, never surrender, never yield, survives not as a command, but as a question. What are we willing to lose in pursuit of strength? For Sparta was not merely a city. It was an idea, beautiful and brutal, noble and monstrous. It showed the heights humanity can reach through discipline and the depths it can fall through pride. Today, the mountains still watch over the valley where the Spartans once marched, their peaks veiled in mist like the ghosts of their kings. And somewhere beneath them, in the quiet earth, lie the remains of a people who tried to breed perfection, and found in the end only silence.